This lecture is on The Ethics of Natural Law by C.E. Harris. Consider two kinds of laws you already know about. On the one hand, there are civil laws, like those against speeding. They are created by men, and people are morally obligated to follow them. On the other hand, there are scientific laws, such as the law of gravity. Scientific laws are pre-existing and not created by men, and they are followed necessarily. That is, no person can succeed in breaking the law of gravity. Natural law is a hybrid between civil law and scientific law. Like civil law, the natural law provides laws that people are morally obligated to follow. However, unlike civil law, the natural law is not created by men. Instead, the natural law exists independently of humans, like scientific laws, and is in that sense natural. The content of the natural law can be figured out from human nature and natural inclinations. One way to determine a thing's nature is by first determining its function. A pencil's function is to write, so a good pencil writes well. A tomato plant's function is to produce tomatoes, so a good tomato plant is one that produces many high-quality tomatoes. As for people, a farmer's function is to grow food, a parent's function is to raise children well, and so on. But what is the function of humans in general, without regard to their occupations or social roles? So we'll take another strategy for determining the natural law, because we can't tell what the function for humans in general is. In chemistry, we learn about the nature of iron by observing how it reacts with other elements. So perhaps we can find out what human nature is like by ascertaining those natural inclinations that human beings have in common. To phrase it another way, perhaps we can discover what human nature is by identifying those goals that human beings generally tend to seek. So here's a proposed moral standard for the natural law. Those actions are right that promote the values specified by the natural inclinations of human beings. We can tell what these inclinations are just through ordinary observation. First, the biological values, life and procreation. Life. We seek to preserve our existences and avoid death. The life value gives us an obligation to promote our own health and a right to self-defense. It implies that murder and suicide are wrong. Procreation. The having and raising of offspring is a moral value, as living things are strongly inclined to engage in this process. The procreation value gives us an obligation to have children. It implies that such practices as sterilization, homosexuality, and artificial contraception are wrong. Next, these are the characteristically human values, knowledge and sociability. Knowledge. We have a natural tendency to pursue knowledge, including the tendency to seek knowledge of God. The knowledge value gives us an obligation to pursue knowledge of the world and of God. It implies that the stifling of the pursuit of knowledge, including the pursuit of the knowledge of God, is wrong, and that a lack of religion is wrong. Sociability. We have a natural tendency to form bonds of affection and love with other human beings and to form groups or societies. The sociability value gives us an obligation to pursue close relationships with other human beings and to submit to the legitimate authority of the state, while it implies that activities that interfere with proper human relationships, such as spreading slander and lies, are wrong. As you might have noticed, sometimes these values conflict. For instance, you may find yourself in an emergency situation in which you must kill a few people to save many. For instance, an overcrowded lifeboat, where if some are not sacrificed, all will die. However, doing so would be against the natural law. The natural law is absolutist in the sense that certain actions are right or wrong regardless of their consequences. Natural law theorists believe that none of the values specified by natural inclinations may be directly violated. This is because basic values cannot be measured or compared and are incommensurable. Therefore, we cannot calculate which consequences of an action are more important as compared to the natural law values. For example, no trade-offs can be made between killing innocent people and saving others, such as in the lifeboat case. Or, no trade-offs can be made between procreation and a sick mother's life or the lives of her existing children. This absolutism makes natural law theory seem unrealistic to many. To make natural law look like a better moral theory than it may seem, natural law theorists often appeal to two principles that help natural law theory to give more plausible answers to moral questions involving trade-offs between incommensurable values. According to the principle of forfeiture, a person who threatens the life of an innocent forfeits his or her own right to life. This principle makes natural law consistent with rights to self-defense, just war, and capital punishment for murderers. According to the principle of double effect, it is morally permissible to perform an action that has two effects, one good and the other bad, if the following criteria are met. The act, considered in itself, is good, or at least morally permissible. The bad effect cannot be avoided if the good effect is to be achieved. The bad effect is not the means of producing the good effect, but only a side effect. The good effect and the bad effect are more or less equally balanced in importance. This is called the proportionality requirement. The principle of double effect is typically said to cover cases like the following. Terminating a pregnancy to save the mother when both mother and child would otherwise die. In this case, terminating the pregnancy is merely a side effect of saving the mother in some cases, and the person doesn't actually intend to abort the child. Or strategically bombing an enemy territory during a just war while knowing that non-combatant women and children will be killed in the process. Double effect justifies this when killing non-combatants is unavoidable and when it's not what the bombers intend. So can you see how these cases might fit all the criteria from the previous slide? The natural law moral theory has illustrious historical roots, but it can be difficult to understand. This is especially true in our day and age when we aren't accustomed to thinking of people as fulfilling some function or following inclinations that are not of their own choosing. In its purest form, the absolutism of natural law is implausible because it doesn't allow any trade-offs between values. Adding the principles of forfeiture and double effect makes natural law more plausible, but it remains to be seen whether or not natural law is the best of all the moral theories on offer. We'll discuss the three cases of applying the ethics of natural law from pages 73 through 79 on the discussion board.